if you have any questions, either write it into the chat or you can raise your hand. And I see already that Felipe raised his hand. So Felipe, you can please unmute yourself and shoot the question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Adarsh and Peter, for your time, for your presentation. I really appreciate the way how you tackle the topic. I'm gonna do a little brief introduction about me in order to set the question. I'm Felipe Cuellar. I did MFA in Design Management at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, and my thesis was about this, was about systemic design. Pretty much, as we know, systemic is divided in many topics. I decided to specialize in relationships, how relationships are an effective way to deal with complexity. And here is where I'm going to integrate my question. Is like how much or how much are you familiar in this approach with systemic design or system-oriented design that started in 2012 in AHO in Oslo. They start different processes, integrating system thinking, integrating design thinking, and they call it systemic design. So I would like to know if you have any relation with this approach, or if you are using a new approach, using like those tools. I would like to know that. How familiar are you with systemic design that started in 2012 in Oslo, and they have been doing every year a series of symposiums developing the topic?
Thanks, Felipe. Actually, I'm not familiar at all with that research thread that started in Oslo. What I know, in Norway, they have a very strong system dynamics program in Bergen. So there's a good foundation in terms of systems thinking there. So if the way I would respond to your question is that it doesn't matter how you call it. It doesn't matter what you say it is. For me, the main answer, the main way of characterizing it is by answering the question, when is systemic design? Not what is systemic design. When is systemic design? Systemic design happens when there is applications of systems thinking beyond concepts and jargons and buzzwords. Basically, theoretical tools that are theoretically based, they embody a theory from systems world, right? That's one. Second, there is room for intuitive insights there. There is room for artistic expressions to some extent. Things are not cast in concrete, like I said. There's always ways of integrating multiple perspectives. There's always this constructivist approach to design. Understanding one thing from as many perspectives as possible and trying to see what type of questions we can have by examining things from different angles that we could not have otherwise had, right? So if it ticks these properties, then we can say, well, again, this is like, this is not a natural science that we can only give one definition of gravity, right? There could be as many definitions as individuals using, let's say, as a whole set of tools or ideas. But this is as far as I'm concerned. And what I've done is that, in the work I've done, is that to try to stay away from disciplines that are defined in that way, instead try to bring disciplines together. For instance, in our program, we work with analytical psychology, concepts from analytical psychology. It is not just a little bit of, let's say, psychological ideas. You will learn psychology. That's how you can integrate it. You will learn using systemic tools that are based on theory. It takes time. It's not easy. Many people cannot basically tolerate that much of ambiguity and complexity and confusion, because working with these tools that are theoretically driven is very different from filling out a template that you can learn how to do in 10 minutes. So there is an expectation that there is very quick returns. Yeah, I know, I put 10 minutes, I get something out. It's not like that. You really have to go through the complexity of this thing and learn and tame those tools. We're not going to tell you how to tame it. You got to tame it on your own, basically. So if there is this dimension of taming, if there is multidisciplinarity embedded there, not just a hint of, let's say, interdisciplinarity, but actually going and diving deep into different disciplines, then we can say that there is a notion of systemic design that can help us expand our time horizons, that can help us dissolve problems, right? That can help us integrate ideals, visions, and insights, that can help us stay away from just pushing problems around, solving one problem here, creating another one somewhere else.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
We have a question and a raised hand as well. I'll start with the question because that came earlier, and it is about, where was it? How do you differentiate systems thinking from strategic thinking?
Well, you can call, you can bring any word before thinking and start, let's say, a field. So this is strategic thinking, this is marketing thinking, this is whatever. For me, strategic thinking, in essence, is systems thinking. If you're interested into gaining insights in how something develops over time, if you want to understand leverage points, if you push something here, what else is going to be moved around in this system? If these are the type of questions that or concerns that you have in strategic thinking, which in my opinion are valid concerns and questions, then basically the body, the disciplined field of inquiry that exists there for you to use from, because strategic management is not a discipline, right? Let's just face it, it's just a bunch of buzzwords and frame and, let's say, templates buckled together, which change from time to time. Let's, for instance, SWOT. What is a strength? What is a weakness? How can you say something that is a weakness can be a strength over time, right? Something that is an opportunity can turn out to be a threat, or the other way around. So these are just a little bit of working with labels and some template work. So I wouldn't call them a discipline on their own, basically. So it's a rehashing of some existing ideas together, which change over time, and they're labeled as, let's say, a field, or I would say at the most they're topics. They're not disciplines. And one plague that we have in our education, especially in business education, is that it's topic-based, is not skill-based. Skills are not measured at the end of, let's say, a course. How much buzzword and topics you know about, that is actually what is happening there. So I would say strategic thinking, if that is the case, yeah, then we can say there is principles of systems thinking in that. Sustainability for me is nothing but understanding systems thinking, how a system is going to evolve over time, and how to nudge that system into the right direction. What are the leverage points that we can actually pull in order to put that system into a trajectory which is going to create less and less harm for individuals in future, or bring benefits for them. All these topics of circular economy, that's systems thinking, that's feedback loops, that they're relabeled as circularity right now. So I would always say go back in time and find the origin of the ideas, and do not be fooled by this multiplicity of instances and these names that come and go. One thing that is somehow in common, one invariant feature of all these, let's say, templates and ideas, is that they disappear over time. No one will hear about them anymore, right? There were things that were used, let's say, a decade ago that people do not know anymore. Strategy maps. Where is a strategy map right now? Where is a balanced scorecard? Who is using it? Where is house equality? Who is talking about it? Where is it? Anything that we are using right now will also disappear in some years. What's still the older is always the newer. This is what I always believe. So the stuff that remain will always come back and will prove their applicability and usefulness. Rely on older stuff and you will not be disappointed. And I know these comments are a bit controversial and provocative. My colleagues in the business schools where I teach do not like me very much because of the same, let's say, rhetoric that I have and the way I look, and I voice my opinions. And I'm always open to any, let's say, scientific discussion, or let's say an argument around these topics that is guided and is intelligent. So I hope that answered that question.
A quick, two quick thoughts on that. Just bouncing off of Aresh's point on, you need to define the details before you can start discussing them. And there's a good discussion, and we also make it a part in our course around what is design. And Richard Buchanan has this good paper around the importance of discussing the meaning of words and the meaning of design, not necessarily to have a definition, but to have a conversation. And to point to something around potential difference between strategic design and systems thinking is that you need to be cautious to avoid focusing too much on one player, because strategic design in essence could, depending on how you define it, have in itself that we are looking at the strategy of one player in the system specifically. And we had a good discussion in the course just yesterday around the hero's journey, which is this template for all the stories in humanity, basically. And the shortcoming of the hero's journey a bit is that it focuses too much on the individual, on one person, and doesn't take into account that other people in the story have their own hero's journeys, which are affected by the protagonists. So if in strategic design you focus too much on the hero, then you might forget about what the system can do, and you might easily oversee unintended consequences that may arise, or to explore things in the system that are not clear on first sight. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a difference. It depends on how you define it. Carmen has had her head up for a long time, so I will ask you, Carmen Beyond, to unmute yourself and please ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, I'm a design researcher. I use qualitative research, and completely resonate with quite a lot of things you've been saying here. You know, this thing about unintended consequences. I see this in research all the time, and the fact that decision making is most of the time based on this logic and data, and not that much on that intuition. That's why one of my theories of the qualitative research that we bring is not always understood, neither value. But my question will be more, how can we make it? Because, you know, I'm not a decision maker, and I see that they are missing this. And I'm glad you are teaching this on the MBAs. I'm not sure how much the decision makers are going to go out and use it. Hopefully they will. But, you know, how can we get better decision makers? And is anything we can do from the bottom? Because I would love to, if I can affect in some way, if you have any tips that we could, you know, or maybe there is not, maybe we just need to wait that we have better decision makers. Maybe there is no solution.
Yeah, I would say there's a Godelian paradox in your question. You're asking for some tips and tricks on how to somehow implement intuitive ideas, or somehow nudge people towards intuitive decision making. That wouldn't work. Your intuition should tell you how to do this, basically. If you want to do that, that is a task that your intuition should undertake in the first place. You cannot approach an intuitive undertaking, right, or intuition-oriented undertaking from a logical standpoint that relies on advice and tips and tricks and ideas from others, first of all. Second, I would say you have to start from yourself. You have to work on your own intuition. What we see, I think, the biggest problem with our education system is that it's heavily biased towards thinking and sensation. It's all about memorization. It's all about thinking. It's all about analysis and so on and so forth. And our corporate world is a mirror of that, or our education system is a mirror of the corporate world. You know, you can look at, for instance, the job titles that people are looking for right now is data scientist. Okay, this is exactly opposite of intuitive approaches to decision making, to understanding things, right? So I would say start working on your own intuition first. And once you have developed your own intuition, which is not an easy task, it's a very time-taking undertaking, developing one's intuition. When in women, you have that capacity. You're more connected to the eros principle as a woman. And men in general, on average, we're talking about averages here, are more geared towards the logos, which is the logical world, right? This is some sort of a, let's say, um, take from a psychological standpoint. So you have that capacity. Women have it much higher than men. So it's let's say the case of accessing it. But for men, they have to develop it, right, from scratch. And developing it takes time. It requires, as I said, a purposeful suspension of analytical thinking. It requires some sort of wandering, going out there to see what happens, what type of transcendence is going to emerge and is going to basically guide you in that journey of develop. It's a bit mystical, this field of intuition, right? Is connecting to those objects that are embodying those mystical qualities. So don't look for checklists, don't look for shortcuts, right? Read poetry. If you want to develop your intuition, read poetry. That is the language of the immortals. That will help a lot in whatever language. Read fairy tales. It sounds, imagine you go into a group with CEO, they say, okay, read fairy tales, how they would react to this. It will be a subject of ridicule, definitely, you know. But these are the things, these are the counterintuitive things that people may reject as anything useful may come out of a fairy tale or a myth or a piece of poem or whatnot. But these are the things that over the long run are going to help you in that journey because they embody those qualities. Poets are those who are very close to those inner objects, those image making faculties and capacities. So by somehow relying on them, you also get close. You can embody some of those, let's say, properties as well. So that is a long answer to your question. I hope it was helpful.
I'm not on mute anymore. We also have another question in the chat, which asks the difference between systems thinking and the innovation process. My quick answer to that is that, as far as I know, there's no the innovation process. It again is around sort of the definitions and what do you see as the core part of it. But definitely when it comes to innovation, one big part of it is really looking inside. It's looking at what the capabilities of your organization are and what the potential even technical capabilities are, and then connecting those to the real world, the one direction, and the other direction, starting from the wider world and then coming back into your organization. How can you do these? But as far as I see, there's no one innovation process. I don't know, Arash, any addition to this?
Yeah, it's an oxymoron for me, innovation process. You cannot achieve innovation through a process, through a number of orderly sequence of steps. First do this, second do that, third do that, bang, innovation will happen. Depends, again, what type of innovation are we talking about? If it's incremental innovation, if you get something you want to improve it a little bit, yeah, that could probably happen, right? That is something that you can go through all these process steps of incremental improvement or continuous improvement. That can probably happen. But when you're thinking about architectural, radical innovation, forget about it. It's just connecting to a world in which processes do not exist. So there is no orderly sequence of stuff. That is hunting in an unknown space. That is what innovation is, right? So if you want to approach it from a four-step process or whatever, I would say that that is not going to be a radical innovation that emerges.
All right, thank you very much. Hopefully that was good. We don't have any more hands up nor any questions, unless this one. Will there be a recording? Yes, there will be. Hopefully the recording will go well, and it should be released in a couple of hours. So you should have an email in your inbox latest tomorrow on this. So we actually also have a YouTube channel, not just LinkedIn and Instagram, and you can check us out there, but we'll be sharing that link. And if there's nothing else from you, Arash, maybe.
Yeah, we just read a comment by David. He said, watch that Gibson is a heritage, actually. big difference between a Heritage and a Gibson. So, anyways, yeah.
Yes, someone is very, very keen on looking at the environment, and indeed, Arash's background offers a lot. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming
Take
and
care,
sticking
keep
around,
safe,
and hope to
enjoy.
see you later as well.